It's time to talk about everyone's favorite topic, light shields, and how we're going to place these bad boys in a tier list. Alright, so we have the standard tier list, OP, great, good, okay, bad. OP, these shields are always good to use. They're significantly better than other things. There's unique features about them that stand out. Great, these shields are better than most things. They have pretty significant features, but are definitely not as good as the S tiers. B tiers are just decent serviceable shields. C tiers are decent, maybe they have a weird fringe use case, maybe they fall off pretty quickly. And then of course D tiers are typically usable for short periods of time, but fall off rapidly and should be replaced. Alright, so to begin with, we have the bronze shield. So let me just pull this thing up. There we go. Alright, so the bronze shield. I would say all bronze weapons are just something you want to immediately replace no matter what. So they have the worst stats and they have no positive attributes beyond just basic stats. Most characters come default with them anyways, and there's just better options, so they should be replaced and upgraded nearly immediately. The recruit shield is in a similar situation. It's only slightly better. It gives you a little bit more max HP, it gives you some XP, but there are better shields even in the early game, so this should also be dropped as soon as possible for something better. And then of course we have the Baroque shield. So this one has better physical defense and okay guard rate. The accuracy +5 early game kind of doesn't matter because the classes that have access to lances, or spears rather, Fire Emblem has ruined my brain, can just true thrust, so the accuracy doesn't matter on a lot of classes. I think this is still bad. The Battler shield, this actually is good. I'm going to put this in A tier. This is going to be confusing because you're like, those stats suck. It gives you 2 damage, and it seriously matters on Cavs and pretty much any class that wants to deal damage. It's one of the few shields in the game that gives damage. So its defensive stats are terrible, but you're using this on something that's not going to be blocking anyways, and you're using it on something that wants to kill and attack. And +2 attack on a defensive item is huge value, and you can of course always upgrade this thing later if you really want to keep using it until end game. But +2 damage is a pretty big deal on a shield. You'll find that as we go through this list, there's very few shields that give offense, if any. I think this might be the only one. We'll see. Alright. Next we have the... Oh, these are a little out of order. Unfortunate. Alright. The Black Iron Shield. So crit rate +4. Physical defense 6, guard rate 22. So you're starting to get an increase in guard rates and physical defense. So also the crit 4, I would say this is like C tier. It has decent stats too. It's respectable. It's like a lower tier stepping stone thing. Next we have the Iron Shield, which is just worse. I don't think this is really worth it. I feel like this is definitely okay because it gives you something, and you can always use this on a character like Virginia or whoever just to squeeze out a little bit of crits. So it is a more offensive shield. Now is crit rate +4 better than damage +2? The Battler shield has near perfect availability, and depending on the build, crit rate could be decent. I prefer just straight up +2 damage because it always works, and if you get 100% crit from some source, whether it be the Sergeant's or Soldier's True Strike, or Crit Strike ability, or like a Sniper Amber Lens or something like that, you could just get away with it. Get away with getting your crit rate to 100% from that. You could argue this is better, but I think the damage is better. It does have better defensive stats though, but it's not bad. It's serviceable. I usually don't run them. I usually replace them, whereas Battler Shield, I've used that for entire playthrough on like a Cav. Alright, Carnot Shield. So similar to other Carnot weapons, it has decent stats, initiative +1. I would say this is like high C tier. The initiative +1 is fantastic. It's not a huge amount of initiative, but it's something. Now, most Carnot weapons typically give 2 initiative, so this one gives half. But the defensive stats are fine, and it +1 is respectable. Next, we have Greatwood Shield. So notice the Greatwood Shield has worse guard rate and physical defense, but gives you magical defense +2. I don't think this is really good or useful. If you want magical defense, there's definitely better shields. This is a kind of generic Elheim shield that's not really that good. Next, we have Steel Shield. This just has okay stats. It's certainly better than Iron. I would say this is low C tier. The Black Iron gives you crit, and it kind of has similar stats to that, maybe slightly better defensive stats, but I don't think this is very valuable. By the time you have this, there's so many options, you shouldn't be running this, but it's definitely better than like these C tiers. Alright, then we have the Spell Steal, which is a little bit worse physically and defense, or guard rate wise, but it has better magic defense. This is also one that I don't really use. I'll just put it in low C tier. It's not really valuable. You're better off switching into something else. All right, Vorpal Shield. So Knit +3. Now we're actually talking a significant amount of initiative. You also get a little bit of health. I would say this is like low A tier because of the initiative. The defensive stats on it are respectable, but initiative in this game is the difference between hitting first or hitting last or second or third or whatever. So the faster you attack, the better. So getting initiative +3 on any weapon, especially if it has good stats, is always good. And I would say this is low A tier. All right, the Dragon Bone Shield. So initiative -10, base passive point +1. Depending on the class, this can be decent. I'll put it in B tier. Depending on the class, if you're a class that goes last anyways, if your job is to block things, if you already have high initiative and losing 10 doesn't matter, this is just like early access to passive point +1. So this is very good in classes like Virginia, who already kind of go last anyways. So she doesn't really suffer that much because her initiative is like 10 to 20 anyways. So you're already slow as hell, but you can allow her to cover more, which can be valuable, or you can use it on just anyone who needs passive points. You can also use it on passive point builds that use like Pursuit or something, so that way, even though you have low initiative, you're still getting attacks off, which is very valuable. But this really isn't that bad. It's respectable. There's a few classes that can use it fairly well. It is like a stepping stone item where you want to drop it for a better passive point shield long term or a better shield long term. But for the time you use it in the middle game, it's decent. The Thorn Shield, so it's the same thing, except instead of losing initiative, you lose HP. I think this is a little bit worse. I'll put it in high C tier. I don't recommend running things like this, because if you're actually blocking and absorbing damage, losing max HP seriously hurts tanks, and I don't recommend running most Thorn weapons in most situations. And also, I don't think they're very valuable. There's definitely better options. I mean, there's things that give you passive point that don't hurt you, so you're better off just running those. Next we have the Icefall Shield. So this is in Bastorius. So you lose... This one's weird because you lose the guard rate it provides. I'm gonna say this is like mid C tier. But by the time you get this... Actually, maybe it's even arguably D tier. Now I know people are gonna be like, oh, it gives you +1 passive point. You have 0 guard rate from it. And by the time you get this, you have so many better options that I don't even think this would ever see use. It's truly that bad. It should realistically never be used, because by the time you get it, you'll have like several things that give passive and some that give active points. Wingcrest Shield. So you lose crit, but you gain a passive point. I would say this one's fine. You could run this. I'll put it like B tier. It's like a serviceable middle grade type thing. It's not better than most shields. It's like an average shield. It's good. It has good stats. You get it late though, so it is competing with things that you don't get late. It's decent. It's serviceable. All right, so you might have noticed I drew in the stupid ink letters. It's because some of these have the exact same icon. These two I don't think do, but a lot are about to, so I did that so you can actually see what they are. All right, so Watchman's Buckler. Its defensive stats are okay, but it has blindness immunity. I'm putting that in low A tier. The whole point of this thing is to slap it on when you're fighting enemies that blind. That's it. You don't use it as your main shield. You use it when you fight the feather bows, because they blind you, and this just completely counters them. So definitely low A tier as a swapping shield. Nameless Guard's Shield. Blindness immunity. Radiant cover. So comparing these two, it has better stats. It also has radiant cover. Actually, holy shit. This is really good. Dude, activates for allies attacked. Cover ally with medium guard. Make that ally's next attack a true strike. Is this low S tier? You give an ally a true strike and cover them for 1 passive point. And you're blindness immune. This is, and it's almost max stats too. I think max stats is 8/30. Pretty sure. We'll find out in a second once we go through it, but I think it's close to max stats. Blindness immunity plus its radiant cover. Now, if you're actually fighting enemies, this is S tier. If you're just killing enemies before they attack, you're probably not going to get this effect off, because you're going to be faster than them. So we'll put it in high A tier for now. It's really good though. Like even just for blindness immunity, it has decent stats. And of course, this radiant cover is not bad. All right, Templar Shield. This is like an early game shield that just has decent stats. The HP recovery is kind of nice, so that when you get healed for more. This thing, I'd say it's like high C tier. You eventually drop it. It doesn't, you don't use it that long. You get better things so quickly, it's crazy. Phantom Knight Shield. So this just gives magic defense. This is really good on units like Virginia just to get magic defense, but I don't think it's really that good. I'll put it in high C tier, just for like dual shield classes, which there's really one in a post-game unit. And then what else? You could switch temporarily switch to this to tank magic better as well. So, but it's such an uncommon thing because mages are slow. You usually can kill them before this is an issue. All right, then Zenoiran Shield. So this is like the baby Zenoiran Shield from the first black market. It's not bad. I would say it's like here, like low C tier. It gives you HP. It has like lower defensive stats, but it gives you some HP. You can buy it if you want it. It's, well, maybe it is worse. Maybe it's like here. It's like around there. Yeah, I mean, I don't really recommend buying it. I never buy it. All right, then the Zenoiran Knight Shield. So this one has a little bit more. You get an ability, Enduring Guard. Block an enemy attack with Heavy Guard. Grants the user a buff to endure one lethal blow. This is actually kind of interesting, because it gives you super tanking. It gives, first of all, it gives you Heavy Guard. Light shields typically don't have access to Heavy Guard. It also, and that's a 75% damage reduction. It also gives you the buff to endure one lethal blow, so it's really 2 effects in one. And it gives you max HP. I'm gonna say this is low B tier for just like switching to, for survivability, the enemies actually hit you. It's decent, it's serviceable, you can use it for a while. You do get it in Black Market Bastorius, I think. Either that or Angel Lands. Either way, you could use this just to survive a hit if some combo goes off that you can't stop in a given squad. Alright, Golden Ram Shield, max HP, stun immunity. I think you get this fairly early, like middle game. Stun immunity, max HP, I'd say it's like high C tier. Enemies don't typically stun you in this game unless you're doing PvP or something. In which case, this is not a PvP list. Heaven Swing Shield, I think this is actually quite good. I think this is S tier. It gives you evasion. It gives you accuracy and evasion. Alright, so max stats are 830. Okay, that's what I thought. But it gives you accuracy, it gives you an evasion, or it gives you evasion. It also has decent stats. I just forged it, just for the hell of it. But stacking evasion with blocking is very good because it allows you to roll for evasion tanking, and then if you get hit, you can then roll for guard rate. And if your guard rate is very high, if you do get hit through your evasion tanking through like a true strike or something, you're typically going to guard it and then reduce the damage even further. So this is really good on most classes. And also hit plus 10 is very good for board attacks that are not true hits, or if you're relying on attacks that are just high accuracy. So it helps you, it really helps you out in a lot of situations. And I do think it's endgame shield. And then we have Azure Crest Shield. This is another one that you could argue, I would say this is S tier. You can get this super early. So part of the reason why most of these things are bad is because you can get this as early as the first Walled City, I think, sells one. And then you can get a second one in Drakenland. Either Drakenland or Elfheim, you can get a second one. But you can get this really early. Or no, it's in the, you fix the bridge in Drakenland. You go in the desert, I think, and you go all the way down and then all the way to the right. And then up a little bit. And there should be like a house. It's either near the desert or it's on the right side of Drakenhold, but there's a bridge you can fix, and an old lady gives you a second one of these. So these are just insane. They're not max. They're 3 damage or 3 defense off of being max defense rate, and then 10% off of max guard. But it's base passive point plus 1 for no downside, and you get 2 of them early. Now, is it better than the Heaven Swing? Maybe. You could argue it is. Passive point plus 1, better availability. Well, actually, no, this has near perfect availability. They both are similar. You get this from Oaklease almost immediately, and then you get this from the Walled City almost immediately. So their availability is very similar. I feel like both of them are very good. I regularly stack evasion tanking, so to me, this is really good. Like, if you throw double Scarf, like a Royal Scarf plus a normal Scarf on a dude, they hit 60 base plus 60 evasion, which is pretty huge if you want to make something evasion tank. So this is really good for that, but obviously this is really good for just general play. I would say they're kind of even. We'll just say they're tied. Scarlet Crest Shield. So this you get I think you can buy one later on, but you can also get one from the arena for 500 Coliseum coins. Now this is almost max and also gives you an action point. I would say this is a little bit better than both of those. Getting action points early is huge value, and then later on it tends to be better than passive points because the things that are going to be running this are going to be attacking. So getting an action point from your shield just allows you to get off like big row or column attacks, or in some cases board nukes. I don't really think there's any board nukes that use a shield. Yeah, I think it's all row attacks, row and column attacks, because all the board nukes are like archers and mages and stuff like this. And then of course gladiator, but that's ground based, not considered to be as good. But it's just a really solid shield. You can't go wrong running this. It's just really solid. Hunter's Buckler. This one's interesting. You get this in Bastorius. Follow-up attacks deal plus 20 damage, and you get plus 5 crit, and it's almost max. Honestly, I think this thing's S tier. I think that's maybe it's even higher. Maybe it's even better than these. I don't know. It's at least here. The nice thing about this is you can use this on Amalia or Landsnacht with the Hunter's Sword to get plus 40 follow-up damage, and you put them on Wide Pursuit, and then you hand them a Sapphire, and then they can Wide Pursuit twice for plus 40% potency. So they're actually Wide Pursuiting for 115 potency, which is a wide attack, which is absolutely crazy. And it also gives you crit. It's arguably one of the best shields in the game. Blessed Round Shield, max HP, heal 10%. This, I would say, is just like a decent little thing to slap on to squeeze out some health. Like, its defensive stats aren't the best, but you can use this on a unit if you need to like chip heal or something, and then just take it off of them. That's really all I use it for. And then we have the Viper Shield. Poison immunity. I'll put this in low C tier. You can switch to it if you really want to. I don't think it ever matters. I never buy them. Poison is never really a problem, except for like maybe 1 or 2 boss fights, and even so, the poison can be dealt with in other ways. Burn immunity, similar thing. I don't think this is really valuable. Frost immunity. It's definitely better. You shouldn't be letting things freeze you, honestly, but you can use it. Here we go. Luminous Shield. Blindness immunity. This is actually something that happens. I would say this is low B tier. Switch to it for anti-blind. Let's see. It also is almost max stats, so it's kind of nice for that reason. Unfettered, guard seal immunity, passive seal immunity. This, I think, is like some utility. You could switch to it when you encounter those. Twin Dragon, burn and freeze immunity. I think Somalia shield, near max. I don't find that many things burn or freeze me. I'm just gonna say it's like here. It's C tier. It doesn't really matter where. High C tier. The drink. Alright, Chivalric Shield. Stun immunity, guard seal immunity. I'll put it here. I mean, the stun immunity stuff, it probably matters more in PvP. In PvE, it doesn't really matter much, honestly. You can get away with not using it. Guard shield, quick guard. Block an enemy with medium guard. Alright, so this is one of the earlier shields that just gives shield units something to guaranteed block themselves, like to defend themselves with, because sometimes shield units don't have an explicit ability that allows them to block that's guaranteed, and they block based on guard rate percent. So this is just like decent for that, but beyond that, I would say it's just like C tier. And I put GS there so you know what it is. I just these have the same icon, so I put GS, so that's guard shield. So that way you're like, what is anything? All right, so this gives you crit rate, mercenary shield. Its defensive stats are, its physical defense is fine. Guard rate's on the lower side. These shields activates before being hit by physical attack. Block with medium guard grants the user plus 20% attack. Effect stacks. This is interesting. Now I know some people like things like this. I think in PvE, you don't need to rely on enemy procs. Like, if an enemy is going to hit you, you're better off just killing them. Like, you're better off just hitting high initiative and killing them no matter the class or the team or the loadout. But if you want to play around with something like this where you let them attack you, this definitely is better than... I would say it's like C tier. I don't like relying on things attacking me. It's definitely better than this, because it has better... Well, it has like side grade stats almost. It gives you crits, then it gives you damage boost, which is interesting. Is that damage boost good? The damage boost is good. It's just that I don't like the condition. Activates before being hit by physical attack. I suppose you could like block it or evade it or whatever, but... Well, maybe you have to block it. I don't know. I haven't tested this. But 20% physical attack that stacks. It sounds really good, but then if you remember like some of the abilities things have, like Cav Call gives all calves in a row 20% attack and stacks, and that's on attacking. That's just better. So you could use this if something's fast enough to hit you. Maybe like an enemy start a battle effect, get you more damage, but beyond that, I don't really recommend running this. Okay, and then we have Cav Hunter's Buckler. So just basic stats and guard efficiency. Block enemy attack with medium guard, becomes heavy, grants user +1 passive point if enemy is Cav. So this has like a niche use case where against Cavs it can infinite block attacks. And it sounds really good in theory until you realize that certain enemies have like multi-hit attacks that hit really hard, or they stun you, or they do some problem, like they do something more beyond attacking. So it seems good in theory, but in practice it's not very good. I would say it's like middle of C tier, like somewhere like here. It may be in some early game matchups it's decent, but there's still better things early game. But beyond that, I don't think the Hunter's shields are very good, aside from the one that gives you damage. Alright, then Holy Knight Shield. So this you get from the Angel Shop for I think 20 fragments. It has almost max stats. It heals 10%. It heals you 10% when using active skill, and you get Holy Guard. Block and attack with medium guard prevents debuffs, but it only works against physical attacks. So, how many physical attacks apply debuff? Maybe like Rogue and some Archer things or some utility units apply debuffs. Of course, things like Viking with their defense debuff and things like this. So, just because it's an early near max shield, I do think this is like high B tier. It has good stats. It's almost max and it heals you, and it also has a pretty good block effect that can be thrown on any units who cannot block, and now they have a guaranteed block against at least physical attacks. So it is pretty valuable. And it's like an early max shield that heals you. It's just really good on a tank. There's no reason not to get it. I've run this like into endgame on like a lane. It's really good on him. It just, the free chip healing constantly helps you deal with spam. It's just good. Alright, Angel Hunters. This I feel like is similar to the other one. I think all the Hunters are kind of just like whatever. I don't really like to run them. Their stats are okay, but other things just have better stats. Like I would rather have +1 passive point or +1 active point or hit and evasion or plus more follow-up damage. I think those are all just better. Alright, then we have Cav, is that, wait, what is BH? Beast Hunters, oh, I see. And then there's Cav Hunter. Oh, did I already do Cav Hunters? Cav Hunter, okay. Alright, so we're on Beast Hunter's Buckler. So same thing, but for Beast Rolls. I never found Beast Rolls hard to kill. As long as you have True Strike, they're very easy to kill. They die almost immediately. So I think this is similarly about as bad as these. And then the next thing we have... the Moonlight Shield. Or do we? Alright, let's do the Moonlight Shield. I guess the order's a little bit messed up. Alright, Moonlight Shield. This is the order it is on the Switch. So almost kind of close to max. Nocturnal Guard. Blocks, grants +1 passive point at night. I don't think this is very valuable. I think it's like similar to the Cav Hunters. It's like some condition that resets your passive point. You could argue it's really good, but if things are attacking you so much that you need these procs, your team comp is suboptimal and it's just not killing fast enough. That's just the truth about it. Like, it's super easy to get teams to kill in this game. It's not even an issue. So if your team is needing to block like 7 times in a row, you're just doing something wrong. Unyielding Shield, Enduring Guard. Block and attack with Heavy Guard. Grants user buff to endure one lethal blow. So Unyielding Shield. So Heavy Guard and 1 lethal blow, and it's near max. I would say this is like here. I think this was like similar to these, wasn't it? There's another one that does a similar thing, but I think the other one also gives you blindness immunity. I think this one also gives you blindness immunity, which is actually always useful no matter what. Well, not always useful, but it's generally more useful because there's a use case for it that you can switch to it. Alright, Squire's Shield, Quick Cover, Cover Ally, Medium Guard. This is a really good source of early game cover. I'll put this in high B tier. So cover and Self Guard are two things that most shield units do not have for light shield. They typically just have a light shield for some defensive stats. So getting access to cover for one passive point early game, you can get these things very early as Cornea, is very valuable, I would say. All right, let me try to frame that better. All right. Okay, cool. Now we're on Ironclad Buckler. So this has an active ability, costs an active point, grants the user a buff that negates one physical attack. This is supposed to be meant to be used on tanks. I have not found this to be useful at all. I'll put it in low C tier. Its stats aren't really that good. Its effect is decent, I suppose, but it's one of those things where you're relying on the enemies hitting you, which is not a good strategy in this game. Manolith Buckler, so another one with an active point cost. Grants the user a buff that negates one magic attack or one affliction. It's interesting. I would prefer if it was like a row attack. Maybe there's some matchup where you switch to it. There's at least some fringe use case where you can switch to it for combat to have a favorable matchup, but beyond that, I feel like these are both too weak to ever run. I've never really bothered with them. I'm usually too busy killing the enemy team to worry about negating their abilities. All right, Parrying Shield. Counterattacks deal plus 50 damage, but also look at the stats though. Physical defense 2, guard rate 10. Plus 50, it's really plus 50% potency. So for example, if you throw this on Virginia, who has a 150 potency true hit on her counterattack, she can use this to have a 200 potency true hit on a counterattack. Negate melee, oh yeah, also this. Negate melee damage for single hit, grant the user plus 1 AP. This is really interesting, actually. I think this is pretty good. I think there are certain units that can leverage this. I'll put it in A tier though, because parries are reactive. Maybe a little bit worse than the one that gives anti-blind. Parries are still reactive at the end of the day. So reactive meaning that instead of hitting the enemy and killing the enemy and not letting them do things, shutting them down, you're letting them attack you. And there are team comps that can do this and still win easily, but I would say the best teams just kill the enemy before they get to do much. And that simplifies most interactions. White Knights, HP plus 15, stats on the lower side. Activates after allies hit, share HP with the ally. So some people have found a use case for this with the Doom Knight, where it gives an ally some of its health, and then it heals itself with attacks. So maybe that's a good use case for this, because Doom Knight is viable for like killing things quickly. It has a good row attack that can typically kill the front row with damage boosts. So I'll put this in low B tier for that use case. For other things, if you have like a lane healing himself or something when he attacks, that could be valuable. There are some use cases where this could be good, I suppose. Personally, I think it is like in C tier, but I'm assuming either we haven't theory crafted this that well if we think it's that bad, or I don't know. Well, hold on, before hit by an attack. Yeah, if it worked off of assists, maybe. I kind of want to put it in C tier, but I've heard about the Doom Knight combo, and it seems like it could be valuable, but I feel like if you just kill them before they do anything, which unfortunately the game is dominated by this, like just stunning enemies and killing them before they can do anything, I'm going to put it in C tier. I'll put it in like mid C tier. I don't think it's very good, but I know some people might pick, oh, that Doom Knight use case, and it's like, I don't know. Alright, Blue Rose Shield, base passive point plus 1. So this is Virginia's shield. This one's actually really good. So first of all, you get a passive point for free, and it has near identical stats to, I think it does have identical stats to the Azure Crest. However, you also get this. Activates before being hit by physical attack, block enemy attack with medium guard. You get a guaranteed block, user recovers 25% HP. That's pretty good. I think this is like S tier. Well, it definitely is. It's like here. It allows your tank, it allows whoever is using this to have a guaranteed medium guard block, and it also allows them to heal, typically allowing them to survive, and it also just has decent stats and gives you base passive point. So pretty solid. Then we have the White Rider Shield, stun immunity, guard seal immunity. I think this is another one of those utility shields that you can just slap on if you want stun immunity or guard seal immunity. The stats on it are good. I think you get this quite late. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure you don't get this when it matters. And by the time you get this, you have better options. I don't remember getting this early in any of my playthroughs. So I want to say you get it like at least halfway through the game, maybe in Elheim somewhere. But yeah. It has decent stats though, it's almost max. but it doesn't have anything like stun immunity is not something that comes up often. Guard seal immunity is even less so. Like, so its attributes are not really the best for like active play. Maybe in PvP it's better. Holy Unicorn Shield, debuff immunity. This thing, it's good. It's definitely good. I mean, it's max debuff immunity. Yeah, I would say it's like, I'll put it in low S. Now, I know in PvP this is like one of the go-to shields, and I think they banned it or something. But in PvE, I think you get it after beating the game, don't you? It's either that or the Signet Ring, but either way, you get it super late, which isn't a problem. It's really good for anti-blind. It's basically, I would say, worse than those other shields that give stats, like passive points, more damage, stuff like this. It's good. It's max shield, debuff immunity. It does everything. Debuffs aren't really that big of a problem outside of blind angels, so that's really all it's really going to be used against, primarily, but decent. Alright, and then... Alright. Kakai's shield. Max stats, initiative plus 10, hasten cover. This is an interesting ability too. Cover an ally with medium guard, grants that ally max initiative for their next action. I think this might be the best shield in the game right now. First of all, initiative plus 10. Everything about this game, I think, for PvE is how fast you go. So if you have higher initiative, you get to go sooner, and if you go sooner, you can stun them. It's the same thing in like Darkest Dungeon, where you want to go first and stun and shut things down before they can get their big attacks off and kill you. Otherwise, they're going to kill you. So having higher initiative, having one of the highest initiative bonuses, I think this is the highest initiative bonus on a shield. It's definitely among these light shields, it is. But you also get a cover that grants max initiative, which allows whoever gets covered to go next. Unless somehow in the middle of a fight an enemy grants max initiative, which in this game they don't. So this is just like a huge ability on top of just a max shield that gives initiative. And I think initiative is more valuable than action points, because active points can easily be acquired through different things, whereas initiative is harder to come by, I would say. Now you could argue you can get plumes for initiative. You could argue that. Most of the shield classes, though, don't need a ton of active points to be useful. They usually have like single hit abilities unless it's like a cav. And even so, most cav abilities, like Wild Rush is 1 AP, Assaulting Lance is 1 AP, Pile Thrust is 2, but Pile Thrust I feel like is completely overkill and rarely needed. So typically the things that want to use this, I would say this is really good on like a cav, just to get it going faster. And the hasten cover is just like a bonus. I would give this the best rating just for the stats without hasten cover, but hasten cover is just like this added thing that allows you to accelerate something else for passive points, which I consider passive points generally to be a worse resource than active points. So burning them early, because active points kill enemies and win you battles, whereas passive points typically don't do that. There are some units that can attack with their passive points, and the attacks typically are weaker than active abilities. There's no like board nuke passive that you can attack with. There's like a counter attack that mage has and stuff like this, but beyond that, I think a nit plus 10 in max stats is pretty much the best shield in the game. I would rather have this than any of the other S tiers on a unit. You only get one of this though, so the other ones are perfectly fine. They're really good, but I think this is the best one. All right, so that is it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe if you enjoyed this or found this useful, and I will see you in the future.